Okay, so thank you very much, everyone. My name's Anna Kantzelis. I'm a member of the IUCN Climate Change Law Specialist Group, and this session today is going to be explaining a little bit more about who we are and what we do. Welcome to everybody here in the room and also to those joining us online. I'm going to begin by handing over to Francesco, and then I will allow my colleagues also to introduce themselves once I bring them up.
Thank you very much, Anna. I must say I'm really happy to have this opportunity because I have been asked many times, what is IUCN? What is WCL? What is the Climate Change Law Specialist Group? And I must admit, I don't have all the answers, but I'll do my best to run you through some slides that try to start giving you some answers. So it's a bit of a pyramid if you want to see it. You have IUCN at the top, then you have the World Commission on Environmental Law under it. Under the World Commission on Environmental Law, you have a number of specialist groups. The one that I'm very happy to co-chair together with Fabiana de Andrade Correa is the Climate Change Law Specialist Group. And recently we have decided that within the specialist group, we have a number of clusters. So we're going to go through these in the next slides. So it's important to understand what the objective of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature is. And again, you have the actual statute, the Article 2 there, shall be to influence, encourage, and assist societies throughout the world to conserve the integrity and diversity of nature and to ensure that any use of natural resources is equitable and ecological sustainable. And you have both our Director General, Gretel Aguilar, and our President in the picture. How do we do that as IUCN? If you look at Article 3E of our statute, you see that to attain these objectives, IUCN provides a forum for discussion. And that's a very important part of what both IUCN, us as Climate Change Law Specialist Group is. And in this forum of discussion, as in everything societal, there's a lot of pieces of the puzzle, one of which is the legal dimensions, and at global, regional, national, and local levels. That's one way we do it. There are many other ways. As you can see, it's letter I, so it's a very long list, but I've highlighted the ones that have more of a legal dimension. So IUCN influences national and international legal instruments. And just as a matter of information, IUCN is not a new organization. It's been around for over 75 years, 75. And a lot of the legal instruments that we discuss in class with students and everything, think of CITES, think of CBD, actually IUCN was in the room when it was somewhat developed or negotiated. So it has had quite a pedigree, especially going back in those days. Another way we do it is by contributing to the preparation of international agreements and encouraging states to adhere to these agreements. So I think it's quite nice to relook at this actual legal instrument, the statute, to realize that IUCN has quite a powerful objective and important ways of going about it. Now, IUCN is not a multilateral environmental agreement. Let's be honest, and let's be clear. However, if you look at Article 18, the World Congress shall be the highest organ of IUCN, and the function of the Congress shall be to define the general policy of IUCN. So here what it needs to be understood is that International Union of Conservation of Nature, the U is really important here. And I sometimes misunderstood this. IUCN is a union of what? Of our members. And you have indigenous people organizations, international NGOs, national NGOs, subnational government, government agencies, and states. And these, if you look at the statute, are divided in three categories. Roughly NGOs, states and international organizations, and subnational governments. Three categories that are part together of a union to conserve nature. And this is where it gets really interesting. And I've experienced it for the first time in Abu Dhabi at the Congress in October. In the previous webinar today, we discussed how the moment you go into COP, politics stands very much at the heart, consensus, consensus, consensus. Red lines, hold your line, and so forth. At IUCN, the rule, Article 31, is simple majority of votes cast in category A, B, and C combined. I'm really bad at maths, so don't really ask me what that means. But it means that it's a different setting, it's a different environment, it's a different vibe than at COPs. NGOs, governments, and so forth, and other members of the union can go to Congress and actually push to pass a motion, that's how we call them, then becomes a resolution, that doesn't need to have consensus. And that made, and I was very happy to be in Abu Dhabi and see the process. To me, it made the IUCN process feel much more closer to society, much more, I dare to say, democratic. And that's something I really, really enjoyed about IUCN. So I don't want to go through this, by the way, it's not very clear or anything, but it just gives you a sense of how IUCN operates and is structured in its headquarters, which are based in Gland in Switzerland, but also in its regional offices all around the world. And let's just say it's a very complicated structure. From a legal perspective, for those of us who work or are interested in law, the Center for Policy on Law, led by Sonia Peña Moreno, is a very important part of it. And thanks to, obviously, the work of IUCN WCEL, the chair, but also people like myself, now we are closer to this IUCN Center for Policy and Law, and we collaborate more closely. But we are not part of the GLAM. We are not hired by IUCN. We are members of a commission. So then the question I often ask is, what does that mean? What does it mean to be a member of the commission? So Article 73 says, the commission shall be networks, highlight networks, remember platform of discussion, networks of expert volunteers. I super emphasize the word volunteers here, entrusted to develop and advance the institutional knowledge and experience and objectives of IUCN. And we are part of the IUCN World Commission on Environmental Law. Are there others? Absolutely. There are seven commissions. Here, please do not quote me. The numbers I said, I told you, are very bad at math. But there are 21,000 members, 21,000 volunteers around the world in these 7 commissions. In WCL, we have 1,300 members. But please do not quote me, don't put me in any machine learning stuff or whatever it is. It's a lot of people, let's just put it like that. Okay, a lot of people belong to the World Commission on Environmental Law. So, the 2 chairs are Christina Voigt and Ayman Charkawi. The WCL has 8 specialist groups. The climate change is just one of them. We have biodiversity specialist group. We have soil specialist group. We have a number of other specialist groups. And then we have something called task forces. The difference is that a task force is more focused, has a time-bound goal, let's say. So we have a task force on developing a model forest act, for example, or a task force on supporting IUCN in the plastics negotiation. So that's the kind of difference between task force and specialist group. In the climate change law specialist group, Fabiano and me, here you see us at COP28 in Dubai, have decided, because again, the numbers, that with a group that has more than 700 members now, it was slightly complicated to bring together everybody in climate change law. What does that even mean to some extent? It was just too broad, in our opinion. So we decided then to divide and conquer, if you want, into 5 clusters. And I'm delighted to have in the room a few of the co-leads on some of the clusters, to which I will give the floor in just a second. We also have a closed LinkedIn group, which is something that we will be discussing in a strategy meeting this afternoon. But there we have 545 people. So it's big, and we want to make it more active, let's say. So let's think about this going forward. What can we do? What should we do more as a climate change law specialist group of something called IUCN WCEL? And I think it's important to go back to our objective as IUCN and the way IUCN goes about it. And really, the way I see it more and more, because of what the commissions are, expert volunteers, we are a very big, wide, and potentially impactful, whatever that may mean, forum for discussion. The problem is we are all involved in so many forums for discussions that we need to find our unique selling point, our added value for both us and those who want to join us. And then you have the other objectives, which our specialist group has contributed. And obviously one of the most important ones has been our participation in the advisory proceedings of the International Court of Justice, but also ITLA's Inter-American Court of Human Rights, and more recently, the African Court of Human and People's Rights. So this afternoon, obviously, those of us who are here will have a strategy meeting, and we're going to devise how we're going to go this and do this more. Very importantly, I think, is, and this links again to the webinar we had this morning, is we need to think how our specialist group, our platform for discussion, our very wide membership can and should push that door open of the operationalization of the ICJ and other tribunal advisory opinions. But also, how do we engage better with the union, with the members of the union? And one of the things that we will be discussing this afternoon, and we have started working, is actually by mapping the motions that have been adopted, all 160 of them at Abu Dhabi, and exploring which have a direct or indirect climate law component, and how and if our wide platform can and should engage with those who propose these motions and want to implement them. So it's an exciting time ahead for the next 4 years. The World Commission leadership has just been reappointed. So we really have a good moment now, both with those in the room, with those online who may want to join the specialist group, to really plan ahead and do some interesting things. I stop here because I said I have very lucky to have members of the different clusters, the co-leads of the different clusters, who can say a little bit more about what they have been doing and what their dreams for the next 4 years of the various clusters are. Without anticipating too much, there's some traditional things that we do, other webinars, other knowledge exchange products, but I do challenge you to think more creatively as well, but with the limits of being expert volunteers, and see how we can manage that very difficult balance. But maybe I'll just keep my chair role, Anna, since I'm here, and I'll kindly ask, I'll actually start with Leonie, who's online, if that's okay. I'm delighted to see Leonie Rains. She leads, together with Madeleine Taylor, the energy cluster, which has a much better name. I'll let you say it, Leonie, and I'll give you the floor for a few minutes.
Yes, thank you very much, Francesco and everyone. Sorry that I'm not with you in the room, but delighted to be there online. So together with Madeleine Taylor from Australia, who sends her regards, we are leading the Inclusive Energy Transformation, that's the more fancy name, cluster. And within the cluster, we analyze the international, national, going down to the very local level, energy laws and how they both facilitate and also hinder technology and the energy transition at large. We have a particular focus on steering them, just as the IUCN mission itself, towards equity and inclusivity. And so far, what we did is we organized a webinar in May, I think, this year, on global perspectives on an inclusive energy transformation, where we really had expert speakers, academics, but also practitioners from all over the world, at least one continent each. who shared their views and perspectives and challenges also within this overall topic of an inclusive energy transformation. That is what we've done in the past. What we have also published a blog post based on this. What our future endeavors are is that Madeline has just edited, or is in the purpose of editing a book towards rural, regional, and remote energy transitions. I guess we can all agree that this is really the struggle. The objectives are made on a high policy level at international or national level, but then it's really the remote areas who often have to place the burden, where the critical minerals are extracted, where the industrial decarbonization is either happening or not happening, and also where the heaviest social, legal, and environmental burdens are felt. So within this book, maybe not the most exciting form of outreach, but yet an influential one, at least I think in academic circles. We pay attention to the rural, regional, and remote perspectives, and we also there have case studies from Europe, North America, Latin America, the Arctic, Australia, and Asia. Once the book is closer to completion, we will organize also our second webinar where we want to put it up front. Another exciting outcome is another edited book. Yes, you can clearly see that we are both academics, on climate law and the Anthropocene, where we have also case studies dealing with energy, but it's also a bit broader. I don't know, Francesco, shall I say more what we do in general in the cluster in terms of topics, or is this enough for now?
I hope you don't mind. I think that's enough, Sam.
Perfect. Thank you.
We can then bring it to the floor if anybody has other questions.
Perfect.
Thank you very much, Leonie, for joining us from the Netherlands. So, Kate, you want to just pop up and just a few words about the litigation?
Thank you, Francesco. My name is Kate McKenzie. I'm co-lead of the Climate Litigation Cluster, along with Ivano Alonia, who is a Senior Research Fellow in Environmental and Climate Change Law at the British Institute for International and Comparative Law. We organized the cluster to really be a place, a forum of discussion, where we come together, we disseminate knowledge and advance innovative legal approaches to climate change litigation. We really foster interdisciplinary collaboration and discussion. We have lots of members who come from a variety of backgrounds. We have academics, of course, we have practitioners, we have folks who have backgrounds in science, in various sciences, in medicine, and in a variety of different perspectives who are interested in climate litigation. So we're really keen to engage in interdisciplinary conversations. Some of the things that we do are also really looking at trends across different approaches and really sharing insights across domestic and international jurisdictions as well. We have had a couple of webinars this year. We do have regular online meet and greet sessions that are an opportunity for our cluster members to get to know each other, build collaborations between each other, share the type of topics and projects we're working on, find opportunities for collaboration. So we have regular online meetings for our membership. We've hosted 2 webinars this year. The first one was the topics for our webinars we generally gather from our cluster membership. And the first one was focused on 2 things that typically are not really put together. And it was corporate climate litigation and the just transition and how those 2 things fit together. And it was a really interesting conversation, putting 2 topics together that are not often discussed together. And then we also had a rapid response webinar. I think the day after the advisory opinion came out, we organized a rapid response, and we had really interesting perspectives from lots of different people who were part of that process, and a couple of blog posts as well, which you can see on the website. And right now, going forward, we will continue to organize webinars on topics that are of interest to the cluster membership.
And also we're looking at doing some cross-cutting webinars with other clusters. We are in a situation, we're in the privileged position with the climate litigation cluster to be able to sort of cut across all other clusters, because climate litigation does cross clusters. So we're talking with the nature-based solutions cluster on having a joint webinar, and that's what we're hoping to do more of in the future, continuing on the interdisciplinary focus.
Thank you very much, Kate. And one thing that I do quite enjoy are the idea of meet and greets. It's partly, I think, a legacy of the COVID time where we did it with friends, let's say. But I actually think sometimes webinars are great, but often it's also just nice to meet people that work in your same areas and have very short but intense get to know each other kind of moments, which you can fit in a very busy schedule of your life. So that's something that I very much value and I do attend when I can. So we also have Varnika here that can say a few words about, and again, nature-based solutions is just part of the title. It has a fancier title that you can share with the rest of it.
Thank you, Francesco. I'm not sure if it's a fancier title. I think it's just a longer title because it's the legal aspects of nature-based solutions. But yeah, so I'm co-lead of the cluster on the legal aspects of nature-based solutions together with Fabiano, who is the co-chair with Francesco of the Climate Change Law Specialist Group. And we essentially seek to have a global forum for discussion, I think similar to the litigation cluster, fairly interdisciplinary. It has people from academia, from the private sector, from the public sector, from NGOs as well, to sort of participate in coming up with a standardized framework for investing in nature-based solutions, not with the view to solely create financial returns, but with impact at the center of those investment strategies. So we look at ecosystem services as a whole, we look at biodiversity and community benefits, as well as carbon markets, which is what Fabiano and I focus on in our professional lives. But essentially we've got around 65 or so members of the cluster. Similar to the remaining clusters, we organize meet and greets. We've done a few this year where we've received a lot of good input into what nature-based solutions mean for different people in terms of their domestic regulations, but also the investability of those assets. And we're now looking to come up with a framework, which is an overarching institutional, legal, and financial framework to guide investments into nature-based solutions while harnessing minimum social safeguards and ensuring community and biodiversity co-benefits. Similar to the other groups, we're also looking to organize webinars. We were aiming to organize one on Article 6 just before COP30, but I think the WCL was very busy with the Congress, so we've decided to move it to next year to make sure that we're also not overwhelming participants with webinars throughout the season. And then we are looking to do our cross collaboration with the litigation cluster to see the positive impacts of litigation into actually creating guiding frameworks for investing into nature-based solutions. So yeah, and Fabiano is leading on the sector at the World Bank, so he brings a lot of that multilateral development finance perspective into the group as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Varnika. And the other two clusters on cities and ocean and islands, I have the pleasure to co-lead cities with Angela Vandenberg and ocean and islands with Laurie Osmundsen. I'll put my hands up, my fault, completely me to blame. They haven't been as active as we wanted. We do have, however, again, somewhat traditional webinars lined up. With ocean and islands, we wanted to really track the so many interesting developments that are relevant from an ocean islands perspective that happened in 2025. Not just the advisory opinion, the UN Finance for Development in Seville, the United Nations Ocean Conference, the COPs, and so forth, the plastics negotiations. And we have two excellent, amazing speakers who are practitioners and experts from small island developing states coming to speak to our webinar. So we will promote that as soon as we have a firm date. When it comes to cities, this I'm very excited, partly because it's a new area of research that we're doing also here at the University of Strathclyde, but also because we are connecting very strongly with networks of cities. And we want to look at an actor which is traditionally not an actor of public international law or an actor of international climate change negotiations, but more and more often incredibly relevant from a climate biodiversity perspective. And again, we have an excellent speaker lined up for a webinar. I'll finish with a few more practical things for those of you in the room that may have been interested in all of this and are asking yourself, that's all fine, how do I join? Same for those online. A lot of good things here. One, it's free, so it's very open to anybody around the world. So how to do it, there is a process. I'm extremely sorry to ask this, but do reach out to Tanya, our executive assistant, who is working here at the University of Strathclyde as a PhD researcher, and she can very much advise you on how to do it. She works very closely with Marina Trindade, who was a previous executive assistant, who also has a wealth of knowledge and has been an amazing person. One thing to actually say about these clusters, we did forget, we are collaborating very closely with the Early Career Research Group. And a fantastic collaboration is that for every cluster, we now have an early career researcher linked to the IUCN Early Career Specialist Group that will work closely with the co-chairs. And I'm delighted to have them on board in this new structure of the Climate Change Law Specialist Group. So very easy to join. And once you're in, again, you will be part of this journey for the next 4 years to really, in a way, also co-produce. One of the nice things of many clusters is that you co-produce the topics, you co-work with the many people that are part of the specialist group. But I'll probably stop here. And I'll give the floor back to Anna. I'm happy to get questions from the floor or.
Thank you very much, Francesco and everyone. I found that actually very useful because I am an enthusiastic but also recent volunteer contributor to IUCN. I have personally found it to be a very rewarding and enriching experience professionally, because I come into contact with expert practitioners and academics that work in fields that I've not previously really gone into myself. And then also, they're just very nice people, and I found new friends. So it's a nice touch point for community building as well, if you're looking for that. But I'll throw it open to the floor first. And Tanya, if there's any questions online, you're welcome to pass those on. And otherwise, I have a question for colleagues to get things started if needed. Sheila, go ahead.
I'm struck by this comment about the climate change released to the wider membership. IUCN itself is an accredited agency in the implementation of a large number of climate projects, many of which will take within them aspects of domestic and policy and regulation development. So my question is, do the clusters actually have any direct or informal linkage to those within IUCN who design and implement programs and projects with and for sovereign states and other agencies, and then the ability to learn from what that implementation has meant for domestic and maybe international law, but also NDC development in a range of countries. I just can't hear that in
Great.
Being articulated. I'm sure it's there somewhere.
Thank you. It's a very full question. Just to repeat it, I'm going to paraphrase and leave out the detail, but Francesco has it to respond. So the question was, are there linkages basically to individuals or groups that frame policy at the domestic level? And then is there a way to feed back in learnings to that process? To Francesco.
Thank you, Sheila. I'm actually gonna stop sharing. I think Roberto can confirm that's the way. It's probably better also from a viewer online perspective. So in these first 4 years that I have been co-chair of the Climate Change Law Specialist Group, we have worked as closely as possible with IUCN Secretariat, let's say, and those parts of the organization that, as you just said, have projects, work on the ground, and either implement or develop policies or so forth. And we definitely want to continue doing it, in particular with the Center for Law and Policy at the international processes. Whenever IUCN is before the plastics negotiations or the COP processes, there's a position paper, and we do contribute as much as we can to those developments. Having said that, I do believe we haven't engaged enough with the membership, with the actual IUCN members. And that is something I am keen to do more over the next 4 years. It doesn't mean we do not want to work with the Secretary, quite the opposite. But again, it's the complicated nature of being a platform for discussion of volunteers. We cannot do everything. And there will be moments where we, not all 700 of us, but those who are involved, will collaborate at the highest possible level with the Director General, even with the President. But other times it will be more casual, if you want. So I wouldn't say it's not structured. It's not that every Monday we get a call from Glan saying, this week you have to do this, this, and that. That's not how it works. But obviously we are open to collaboration. We have encouragingly engaged with a number of parts of IUCN, but I am very keen, and we'll discuss it in the strategy meeting we're going to have today, in looking also at that other part of IUCN, which is the union, the membership, and see how and if we can collaborate with that point.
Anybody else have any questions for Francesco, Kate, Varnika, or Leonie? I do have one, but I'm I don't want to open up a can of worms if things are naturally drawing to a close, but it just struck me. So the main way that I've contributed so far is working on the ICJ advisory opinion process, and that was something very practical and meaty. As each of you was sort of talking about the kinds of content that you put out in your clusters, I'm hearing a lot of webinars, books, that it all sounds like thought leadership and discussions. So the question I have is, who is your main audience when you're thinking about producing this content, and who is the main user of this content? Is it mainly the IUCN membership and the members that you're seeking to engage? Or I think it's kind of connected in a way to Sheila's question. Are you thinking about going beyond that? It's an open question and maybe you don't have an answer, but Kate is making, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I think it's a really important question. And the simple answer initially, I think, is that our immediate audience with the cluster is the cluster membership, right? The folks who are part of, who've chosen to be members of the cluster for whatever the reason is that they chose. So that is the main audience. What has kind of naturally happened in the litigation cluster is that through our meet and greets and some of the webinars that we've had and the ability, now the webinars are open beyond the cluster membership. For our webinars, we do ask first and foremost our cluster membership if they have particular expertise they'd like to contribute on a webinar topic, but the audience for the webinars is broader. Now for our meet and greets and internal cluster discussions, it is absolutely the cluster membership. Organically, what has happened from that is collaborations have formed. invitations to speak at particular sessions or conferences, collaborating on papers, those contacts are being formed within and between the cluster members just through their meet and greets and the opportunity to discuss with each other their different areas of expertise, knowledge, or gaps in knowledge where then they can find collaborating partners within the cluster membership. So that is our approach with the litigation cluster.
Varnika, would you like to, I couldn't tell if that was. You're welcome.
Thank you. I would say it is very similar to what we are doing in the nature-based solutions cluster as well. And the main focus is our cluster membership and to make sure that we're able to engage in knowledge sharing and provide that forum for networking and discussion, which has led to these sort of collaborations. I think it has also led to cross collaborations within different clusters. And as a result of that, you see some of those collaborations bleed out into more sort of international or public-facing processes. For example, we had the Congress, where quite a number of the cluster members from different clusters were also participating in the Congress. Before that, we had a conference in Morocco earlier this year, where you could see a lot of the sort of cross-collaboration and knowledge sharing of an interdisciplinary nature of around, I want to say, 300 to 400 participants over a period of 5 days. And then the outputs that we produce as part of the cluster are very much intended for public consumption to create a sort of minimum baseline standard after intensive internal discussions to set those sort of frameworks for guiding either litigation strategies or any of the other clusters as well.
Yeah, sure. Faith has one more thing to add.
Absolutely. Big, and I saw Leonie nodding her head, so she may have something to add as well. But I just wanted to also just point out two different things. One is some of our cross collaboration has come from, I'm a member of other clusters, right? I might be the co-lead of the litigation cluster, but I am a member of other clusters. And in those conversations, we're finding some of those crossover topics that are of interest to both or multiple cluster memberships. The one thing I forgot to mention in our cluster is that one of the things that we're looking to do going forward, and this has come from a sort of an impulse from the cluster membership, and that is finding ways and platforms beyond the meet and greets that we're able to organize as a cluster for the cluster membership to actively communicate and collaborate with each other in a sort of safe environment that is cluster specific. So that's something that we haven't figured out yet, but it's something that we're exploring to understand how we can service, make sure that the members get the kind of communication platforms that they're seeking, keeping in mind that we are volunteers.
Anything from you, Francesco, to add? No. Okay. So summing it all up, there'll be. Sorry, Leonie, did you want to add anything?
No, I had nothing to add. The nodding was confirming of what has been said. Thank you.
Vigorous agreement, that's fine. Yeah, so to sum up, there's plenty of content for all of you to use freely as it might be useful, but if you would like to get stuck in for a deeper collaboration, please join us. And I'm also going to invite you to contact Tanya to give you further details about that because I don't have them handy. Thank you very much for your time, and Francesco's going to wrap it up.
Thank you very much, Anna, for sharing. We're very okay to finish it a little bit earlier. It's not a problem, quite the opposite. Really thank you again to those who supported in the organization, the cluster leads with me, and to those both in the room and online. The webpage of the Climate Change Law Specialist Group does have more information about the clusters. all the webinars, all the blogs and briefs that have been published over the last few years are all available on the webpage. So that's an immediate resource for you to be able to review. The last thing I will say is that, and I know we emphasize the volunteer aspect quite a lot. The volunteer is a bit of a double-edged sword, though, because on the one hand, you could say, well, I'm a volunteer. Don't ask too much from me. On the other hand, nobody obliged me to be a volunteer. So it's a really tricky thing. Yes, I have, and all of us, most of us, will have either a full-time day job or, other commitments and so forth. But on the other hand, nobody came, as far as I'm aware, with a pistol on your head saying you have to be a volunteer for IUCN and one of the commissions. So all us 21,000 have made a choice to join a commission at IUCN, should be reading the statutes, at least the lawyers should do, and understand what we actually got into, and then plan accordingly. And I think I also sometimes forget the other part. And I'm a volunteer. What are you asking me to do? So I think that's one aspect to consider very carefully. And I think we will do it this afternoon to see how we can. And usually the word is alignment. Let's see how we can align best what we would do anyway, to some extent, with this exciting platform. And again, having been at Abu Dhabi at the World Conservation Congress, I really came out and back with a buzz, which I did not have before. And I want to move into the next 4 years with an excitement, with a collaboration, both with the Secretariat and regional offices, whether it's GLAM Panama, but also with the memberships. That could be the biggest NGO you can think of, or the smallest civil society organization in Burkina Faso. And that's the beauty of IUCN to some extent. So I'll stop there, but I look forward to continuing this conversation with new members who hopefully will join after this webinar. Thank you very much.